Afternoon, everybody. Just not to repeat anything that General Kehoe said, but it might be good just very briefly for me to refresh our memories about exactly how and why the Medal of Honor is presented. It's the highest decoration awarded by the U.S. government. It's bestowed by the President in the name of Congress on members of the U.S. Armed Forces who distinguished themselves through, and I'm quoting, conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his or her own life, above and beyond the call of duty, while engaged in an action against an enemy of the United States. Now, there are only 3 living recipients of the Medal of Honor from the last 10 years of conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan, but only one of them has re-enlisted and will stay on active duty through at least 20 years, and that, of course, is this gentleman. Please welcome Army Ranger Sergeant First Class Leroy Petry.
Thank you, sir.
You saw what that reaction was, Sergeant. How used to that are you so far since you received the honor last July?
I think it's something you never get used to. It's overwhelming. My son went with me to a baseball game, and they wanted me to throw out a first pitch. And I said, well, my left hand, if I still had the right hand, I'd do it, but my left hand doesn't throw that well. So I said, is it okay if my son does it and I go there with him? They said, absolutely. As we're walking out, the fans of the stadium just went wild and clapping, and it was loud. And he's standing next to me, and he starts hyperventilating, going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I kind of patted him on the back and said, it's going to be all right, just throw it.
Well,
so it feels like that almost every time.
You better get used to it, because I have a feeling this is going to happen for the next 60 years or so of your life, so I guess you better get used to it. We know how they feel about you being a recipient of the Medal of Honor. What's it mean to you to be a recipient?
To me, it's such a great society, and all the Medal of Honor recipients were my heroes growing up in the service, and to learn about the foundation and the society and what their goals, ambitions are to give back to the communities and make this nation better is a lot, and it represents everyone in the armed services, all those who have served, but especially those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice.
There's rumor floating about that you leaned over during the ceremony with the president and whispered something to him, and there's a lot of conjecture about what you did or didn't say to the president. Would you care to share that with us, or is it privileged information?
Oh, no. It was I leaned over to him and I said, this is quite an honor to receive, and it's hard, but it makes it a little bit easier knowing that a lot of my family, a lot of my friends, fellow Rangers, and then a lot of my heroes were either there at the ceremony or watching it on TV, and that I am afforded the chance to continue to serve. And
you just mentioned Rangers. There's a lot of Navy here. Hey, tell us what the Rangers do. What's the mission of the Rangers?
The 75th Ranger Regiment is a part of Special Operations. They're wow, give me a second. They're a rapidly deployable light infantry unit that is able to perform various special operations missions to include airborne, air assault, and direct action operations throughout the world.
So you can parachute, go in by helo, go in on the ground, any way to get there.
Land, sea, or air.
Any way possible.
Sir.
What is that? Every military organization has a creed, motto, saying. You have one in Rangers. What does that mean to you?
We do. It's we have a couple of them. Ours is actually sua sponte, of their own accord, and then our more famous one is Rangers Lead the Way, which is one of the ones that I really respect.
Where were you on 9/11?
On 9/11, everyone knows where they were that day. I remember exactly where I was. I was in pre-ranger down at Fort Benning, Georgia, and we were out in the field training, getting ready for Ranger School, and the instructors were watching it on TV out there, and they were kind of telling the students what was going on with the towers, and we all expressed concern and interest, and we asked if we could come inside the building and watch, and they said, "You need to get your butts back out there and keep training because you might be going to war soon." And little did they know how correct they were.
What, do you recall, how many deployments have you had in the last, you were on active duty in 99, right?
Yes, sir.
How many active deployments?
I lose track. I think it's 9 or 10. Which
Yeah.
Before you applaud that, there's I like to tell a lot of people that sounds like a lot, and I'd be self-serving if I didn't say a lot of my peers are getting ready to go on their 15th deployment. So it's modest, and few of mine were short ones. So it's to those men and women that.
Do you remember your first
continue.
deployment?
I do. I remember it very, very well. I remember everyone training up to go to the fight, and then finally here we are loading up in the C-17 aircraft, getting ready to fly overseas, and everyone's geared up. I'm looking across the seats across from me, and I could see everyone has the camouflage on their face, and everyone's excited, but at the same time I'm wondering if everyone has the same feeling as I do at that moment, where my stomach's in knots and just butterflies and not knowing what to expect. And there was that little bit of confidence knowing that I was going with my fellow Rangers and that they were going to do everything.
You know, at that age,
possible.
How bulletproof do you feel, if at all?
Oh, it's kind of funny. I mean,
that stage?
At any stage, I think we all still feel that we're bulletproof until we get injured. And I was talking to some West Point cadets out at West Point, and I said, when you go out there, don't think that you're bulletproof and that you can't be unharmed. Same with your soldiers or airmen or service members, whatever. And I said, because I had that mentality at one point. I thought I was Superman, and unless that grenade was made of kryptonite, I wasn't.
You found out. Let's cut to May 26th, 2008.
Yes, sir.
Afghanistan. Tell us the story, would you? What was the mission? What was the objective? What happened?
We had got notification that there was a high-value target that they were looking at in the region.
And where were you? Where was this?
I was in Ptsd province. And throughout the country, I mean, they said whichever region he pops up in, whoever's closest is going to be the ones to action on it. Well, it was early morning, and I had been walking around, and we got alerted, and we went straight into planning to go after this high-value target. And I remember them saying, get your guys ready. And a few missions, there's times you get stuck out a little longer than you thought possible. So I usually throw a few snacks or whatever jerky we have in our chow tent, and for the younger guys, if we get stuck out longer than we're supposed to, kind of boost morale. But I remember that day walking into the chow tent and seeing the place decorated with flags, and just it looked like the 4th of July was going on. And you get so busy, and we're doing so many missions, almost 1-2 a day over there, that you lose track of time, what day it is. And I remember walking up to this one table, and they had a sheet cake on the table, and on the sheet cake was written "Happy Memorial Day." And I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know it was Memorial Day at that point.
Right.
So I run outside, we get going, and in the back of my mind I'm thinking, we've we have a history of operating at night, and that's because we have the upper hand of night vision and speed and surprise. And history has proven for Rangers that as we operate in daylight, that we almost operate on a more even battlefield. I mean, we're still always going to be on top, but it was something in my back of my mind that was that we've always had somebody injured, and I thought that as I go out there, safety was the most paramount thing, is to do my best to not let any of my Rangers get injured and bring them all back home to their families. And
how big was the unit that went out?
Approximately 60 to 70 personnel, and then we got on the helicopters. We infilled to the objective, and upon touching down in the helicopter, we immediately took contact coming out of the helicopter. We killed one enemy, and I was helping my platoon leader clear this person. And as I noticed off to my left hand, there was one of our younger squad leaders leading his squad into a walled compound. I immediately told my platoon leader, hey, I'm going to go with them. They probably need my help a little bit more. And as I went in, I was the last person into the compound. They began clearing one of the buildings inside. Picture a 9-foot wall, about the size of this room, going around, and we had entered through one of the corners. They started clearing one of the 2-story buildings inside this walled compound. I was the last guy in, so I stayed in the doorway, and I said, give me another guy. I need to clear this. We need to start clearing this courtyard. As soon as I got a tap from PFC Robinson, who was there, he came with me, and we started to move inside the courtyard.
Did you know how many bad guys were in there at the time?
We didn't, and we were trying to kind of fish them out. But as we started to move, two enemy from my left-hand flank, about 15 feet away, immediately opened fire with AK-47s shooting from their hip, and one round had struck my left thigh. And I know it's kind of strange, but the first thought that went into my mind was Forrest Gump. Something bit me and started running, get behind cover, which is what we're trying to do, return fire and get behind cover. And PFC Robinson, who was behind me, got shot right below his left armpit, but luckily the ceramic plate carriers that we wear saved his life by stopping that bullet.
Where'd the bullet go that went into your thigh?
At first I thought it was lodged into my left thigh, and it had come in on the upper thigh, and what happened was he caught me while I was running, and it had ended up tumbling and going through both my thighs. And it was a miracle I'm thankful for every day that it didn't hit any arteries or bone, but it took out a lot of muscle tissue. And we get behind a smaller building, which they ended up calling a chicken coop because of its size. And immediately I prepped a grenade, threw it over the building toward the enemy. As that grenade went off, another Ranger, Sergeant Higgins, had come to our aid. I immediately told him to start working on PFC Robinson, who was to my right. And they were pulling security. I told them we were still taking a heavy volumes of fire, small arms fire around the building. My biggest fear was that they were going to converge on us and come around and catch us while we were down. But I'm calling up on the radio, giving status updates to my chain of command, painting the picture for them so that they can support us, letting them know of our casualties so they could start planning for medevac or to have medics available. And at that point, my legs started to hurt. At this time, I'm still thinking I'm only got the bullet in my left leg. So I sat down, and I continued to pull security on my corner of the building and continually checking on my younger guys. Next thing we know, we hear a loud explosion, which knocks the two to my right down, and
Grenade?
It was a grenade. Sergeant Higgins, I remember him turning around to me and going, "What was that?"
Heck.
And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, they're throwing grenades. Keep your heads down. Keep pulling security." And I immediately turned to my left, and I was pulling security. As I turned back, the building width was no wider than this stage. It was about the size of this stage, just elevated about 7 feet high. And we were all lit along that area. One was kneeling down, and one was sitting down on this side, recovering from the first grenade blast. I was on that corner, sitting down against the wall. And the next thing I know, I turn around to check on the two, and there's a pineapple grenade sitting in about arm's distance in between us. Immediately, I recognized it as a threat to them and myself because we haven't used pineapple grenades in quite some time. Well, something that I had always thought about, and the grenade has up to a 5-second fuse, and I figured if I have time to see it, I have time to react to it. And that's what was in my mind, was get it away from my guys. And as I picked it up, I was going to release it. As I opened my hand, it exploded. And I sat back up and grabbed my arm just below the wrist where it was taken off, almost like a circular saw had sawn through and clean cut it off. But I remember it vividly. The smell of burning flesh, explosives, the dirt, the blood, the skin. It was almost like for lack of better terms, a skirt of meat hanging around. I could see the radius and the ulna bone popping up about a 1/4 of an inch. And another strange, unusual thought went into my mind. Why isn't this thing spraying up into the air like in Hollywood? and that went through for a split second. Then reality hit. You need to do something about this. Well, getting the extensive medical training and whatnot, knew exactly what to do. Grabbed the tourniquet on my outside, my kit, applied the tourniquet, stopped the bleeding, and got back up on the radio. Gave another status update to my leadership and told them we were still heavy contact, receiving small arms and hand grenade. And I told them I lost my right hand. Well, at that point, I realized on the radio that probably wasn't the best way of describing it, because had I been on the other side, what do you mean you lost your hand? And
how surprised are you that you didn't either pass out in shock or something? I'm not a doctor, of course, but you didn't pass out. Was it automatic that you could still think and put a tourniquet on and save yourself?
It was almost automatic, because I knew that as long as I was still breathing and still able to physically do stuff, even if I had lost both my legs and my arm, if I had one hand to push that button on a radio, that I could still communicate and contribute to the fight and still give guidance to my soldiers that were with me. So it was unbelievable. But to be honest, I to this day, I don't know if it was the adrenaline or the nerves that had been severed so quickly that I didn't feel any pain. Wow. And it could have been my mind was elsewhere, but
focused.
That was the total focus of my train of thought. It's not over. You're still here.
We hear a lot and we read a lot all the time about PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder. What about you? How are you? To what extent, not only this experience, but other ones, play in your mind, don't play in your mind? How are you, and what symptoms, if any, have you ever had since this period?
Wow. There's been quite a few close calls in my military deployments, but I think PTSD, which I hear they're trying to drop the S because they're not saying it's a syndrome, but in my personal life, I think we all get affected a little bit, but as far as nightmares or reoccurring events for myself, I don't suffer from any of the negative.
You decided to re-up after that incident, right?
Yes, sir.
And before you were a recipient of the Medal of Honor, right?
Yes. I had gone through the med board, and I was actually going to get out of military service. I went on through with my wife back and forth for days and she used to come up to me and say, well, what is it today? Are we getting out or are we staying in? And
Are we getting, yeah.
and I said, I don't know. We'll see what tomorrow brings. And it took up until my last day, and I was supposed to retire on a Saturday, and I called my Pueblo, which is the guy that handles a lot of your med board, and I remember calling him up and saying, hey, I've changed my mind. I want to stay active duty. Is there anything that we could do to stop this? And he kind of, phone went silent for a little bit, and then he goes, it's 3 o'clock on the East Coast, and it's a Friday. And he says, I got to make some phone calls. And he hangs up on me. And luckily, he was able to work it out, and I'm still able to stay active duty.
So at what point and how did you tell your wife that you had made this decision?
Oh, wow. Well, it's happened before. I mean, that was my choice to stay in. I re-enlisted afterwards, but during my second enlistment, my wife, she didn't want me to stay in the military. She said, we've had enough deployments, we're getting out, and you need to just spend some time at home and find something else to do. And there was all that concern. It was still kind of new to her, too, at the point, and I remember coming home, it was my birthday, opening the door, and she's there with a big smile on her face. Happy birthday, the kids are there. And
hi, honey.
yeah. I was like, hey, how you doing? And I was like, I re-enlisted for 6 years. Signed the contract already today. And she's like, the smile dropped down to about a half smile. But later down the road, she said, you made the right choice. And she was happy, and she said, I choose to support you, and I know you're going to make the right decisions for yourself and our family.
What does that say about her? Boy, that's
she's got
time.
strength.
Huh?
Everyone in the military always calls the household six. That's the boss. She's the boss, and she's got the strength. And having 4 children and having to go on the road or go overseas on deployments, and her being able to get, because all of them are active in sports, get one to this practice, one to this game, and to still make the meals, do the scheduling, do all the birthdays, get the mail out, send out pictures to family.
How do you describe that commitment? I mean, and this is not just your wife, right?
No,
everybody's.
it's every, and it's where I like to, when I always meet a family, I always tell them thank you for your service, and to the families as well, because it's not just us in uniform that are serving, it's our entire families, for those of us that have families. And while everyone has a family, mom, dad, whatever, and there's always concern and a lot of sacrifices that the families make for us to continue to serve.
You know, all those deployments, what was it like when you would leave with your wife and with your children when you would go? What went on to say goodbye to Dad, who's going to head out to who knows what?
Well, it was tough, but we knew that what I had signed up to do, and that the support grew for a little more understanding of what I do, and they started to, as the more deployments went on, they started to get what it was all about, my kids and my wife, and saying goodbye. It was tough for me, and a few times at the beginning it wasn't tough, because I knew I still had that mentality of being Superman, nothing's going to happen to me. So I was like, I know where I'm going to the game. I was like, I'm going with the boys to the game, and I'm going to miss you guys, but I'm going to come back and see you. Not really thinking about that time I walk out the door could be my last. And I think for the family it hit a little more at home, because they realized that could be the last time they see me walking out the door. And after being injured, that stuff goes through my mind all the time. It's any day could be your last. And it's difficult, but we know the importance. So that's what kept us getting through it.
Since the White House and you're becoming a recipient, how much have you traveled and talked on behalf of the Medal of Honor Society? How much have you been gone since last July?
Well, a little bit with the society, but a lot because I'm still active duty, a lot with the military, and that's my big piece. I enjoy seeing all the services. In fact, got to go yesterday and visit the Coast Guard down the road, which I've never had real interaction with the Coast Guard. So it was a great opportunity for myself, and I've traveled quite a bit. My family was able to travel with me during the beginning.
How'd you pull that off? That's cool.
Well, having 4 kids and a wife.
And how old are they?
21, 17, 13, and 8. Girl, boy, and I had told the folks at the Pentagon I'd like my family to travel with me as much as they would like to, and I said, you guys, we always advertise we're all about the family, and I said I'd like to have them with me there to show them. And my wife was planning on being with me here today, but it's basketball season and the kids have a tremendous schedule, and she couldn't leave
Taxi
them.
service.
Yeah, she always jokes with me, I got to get her one of those lights for the car.
Right.
But
so I understand you did an interview on Fox with your whole family?
yes.
How comfortable were all of they being on network TV?
It was a little, they had a little stir fright, but they started getting used to it and realized that nobody's up here to throw stones or swords at you, and that we're just normal people like any other American family. And I think my son, that was the best part of the interview that day.
And how old was he then?
He was 7. And this is 2 days after the White House, and we haven't had much sleep at all, and we're pulled here and there. And they asked him how he felt about me receiving the Medal of Honor and going to the White House and meeting the president. And the answer he gave just choked me up inside, and I was so proud of him that he came up with it on his own. He said, well, I'm really proud of my dad for what he's done, but I'm really happy that he was able to save 2 of his friends and they're still here. And it still chokes me up today. I mean, at that age, he understood and he gets it. And I talk a lot about, a lot of people will say the courage, and they say, how did you have the courage to do what you did, grab a live grenade? And I tell everyone that I meet that it's not so much how do you find the courage. It's one of those words that in the military isn't said too much, especially amongst the ground pounders, infantry, is the love. The love for a fellow soldier. And to look at them as my kids, my brother, my sister. I don't have any sisters, but my mom, my dad, and just part of my family. But to look at that and say, I would do anything to protect my family. Well, they are my family as a service member.
What does it say about those guys that they were the ones who nominated you for the medal?
Wow, I think that's probably the most overwhelming part. And I had heard other recipients say it, and that's probably the most pride I felt, is that regardless if the medal had made it through, and there was speculation whether it was going to make it through or not, and because at that time we hadn't seen one since Vietnam, and just to know the fact that the men that were there with me that day thought that I was worthy enough to put in for it, that was enough for me.
You know, over the years, I've been honored to meet and have conversations with a number of Medal of Honor recipients. And every one of them at some point in conversation would say, you know, I was honored here, but I have seen so many other acts of courage that surpassed what I did, and a kind of disappointment on their part that others would not be honored just as they were. Does this ever enter your head, too, in some way or other?
It does. I definitely, I mean, like all of us, wish there was more recipients, and it's not even only about the Medal of Honor. I enjoy, the other day I was at the awards, and congratulations to those of you service members that were recognized today. That's the part I love, is no matter what level of recognition, that we are recognizing the positive acts of a lot of our soldiers. And I hope that continues to go forward.
You know, talking about, get back to Vietnam for just a moment. How many trips, when did you first go to Vietnam? Excuse me, Vietnam. Afghanistan.
I wasn't alive.
Talk about a Freudian slip, wow. To Afghanistan, what year?
2002.
And when's the last time you went?
I went for a small trip and right after Thanksgiving and got back in December.
This past Thanksgiving?
Yes. I wanted to go for Thanksgiving. I wanted to be over there with the troops for Thanksgiving, but my wife told me she was going to put 2 slugs in my chest if I didn't spend some time at home. So I was like, okay, that's the boss.
What changes do you see over the years about what's been accomplished by us in Afghanistan?
Well, it kind of brings me to the point where people always ask, why do you keep going back? And you've served your time, and this is for a lot of service members out there. You've already done so many deployments, or you've done your deployment, let somebody else do it. And they say, what drives you to keep going back? Well, for myself, that's the thing that drives me to go back, is to see the positive impact that we're doing in Afghanistan. From 2002, I can remember I hadn't seen one paved road, and I bounced around the country quite a bit. And now you see a lot of paved roads, you see schools being built, you see a lot of the support from the civilians there. In fact, this last time I was there, I talked with a lot of the civilians as I was just going around the base, and a lot of them spoke pretty good English. And I remember this conversation with this one gentleman, and he said, we love having Americans here. He said, I wish you guys could stay forever. I said, that's nice, but our families want us at home too, so we're going to help you out.
What do you do every day now? You're active duty? You're in the Army? You're a Ranger? What are you doing?
Well, that was kind of the part of the decision process to stay active duty. Was I had found a job where I knew I could still have a heavy impact, and that was I'm still assigned to the Ranger Regiment, but I work for Special Operations Command down in Tampa, and I'm part of their, what they call SOCOM Care Coalition, which is designed, I'm a liaison in the Northwest region, and it's kind of a umbrella, so to speak, for the Special Operations, another level of care for the wounded, ill, and injured, not only the service members, but their families. And I had a liaison from SOCOM when I was going through my rehab and everything that took care of my family. Great, made sure they were brought bedside and made sure we had places to stay and transportation, and they did such a phenomenal job. And the military, every branch has their things to do like that, but this one is kind of a smaller, so and it's still guys in my community of special operations and their families. So to be able to go back, and I know I can't go back to the front lines because I tried while I was overseas, and there wasn't they didn't want to bite off on me going out there, but I did get to see a lot of the troops, which was positive, and a lot of the cache sites and the wounded soldiers. But that's kind of my passion now, is being able to help those coming back from the fight and those getting injured on active duty doing the job.
How do you deal with having lost friends? lost buddies, your family, as you call them? How do you deal with that? How do you park it someplace and move forward?
Well, that day during the actions, while I was grabbing the hand grenade, another squad leader, Sergeant Roberts, and a Specialist Gaither Cole, who was a squad automatic weapons gunner at the time, were coming out into the compound to assist us, and there was another enemy combatant who had shot Specialist Gaither Cole right below his helmet, and he succumbed to his wounds later. And I've lost a lot of friends and a lot of brothers in the armed services that I personally have. I had this. I know you can't see it out there, but it's a little plaque mounted to my prosthetic limb that has the names of all the guys from 2nd Ranger Battalion that I've lost throughout the global war on terrorism. And I went back to Panama and Grenada for my unit because I had the real estate, as I call it, to go ahead and mount that on there. And it's a way for me to have a living memorial to remember them by. And it's they gave the ultimate sacrifice. But the way I look at it every day is that they would look down upon those of us that are still here and say we all signed up for the same thing, knowing that we had the greatest risk, and it could have been you or I at any time. And it's in our Ranger creed, fully knowing that is my chosen profession. And our families are part of that, where they signed up for it too, and we all deal with it together. And we're still supportive. We lost a few this last trip over. That guy was on his 14th deployment, and my wife and his wife still talked, and we try to help each other through it.
How much of that is your new passion to stay involved?
I love it. I'd say going, like you were saying earlier, traveling to go to events like this is great. And I'm still working with Sergeant Naval, who's my public affairs officer, but we try to manage my schedule so that I could do some of this, because this is equally important, and I could reach out and touch a lot more people by coming to events. But the wounded soldier that's sitting there, it's equally important to be there with them. So I got to juggle. That's been the hardest challenge, is juggling my schedule to facilitate the best of both worlds. Plus, you got the home life, which I got to make time for that.
Priorities.
Yes.
Priorities. How much does it mean to you when people, it's so unlike during the Vietnam War, when the troops came back from Vietnam, now more and more people are coming up to men and women in uniform and saying, thank you for your service. What does that mean to you? And all of you?
Everywhere I go, and this is a perfect opportunity for me, is to thank all the veterans in the crowd. And it was because of all of you as veterans that have served that gave me the opportunity to be born into a free country and gave me the opportunity to continue to serve my country. So if you can, give a round of applause to the veterans in this forum. I'd appreciate that. And thank you for what you've done. But that's a big part. Is I'll be going to the grocery store or whatever, and I'll see a Vietnam veteran ball cap, and my wife will look at me because I'll go 4 rows out of where we're going just to go down there and tell that gentleman or woman thank you for their service. And it's hard to know that we get so much recognition, and it wasn't the same for them. Right. So I try to make it a point for myself to do that, and I tell everybody that we don't do it for the thanks or the money or anything like that. Serving the country, it's because we believe it's the right thing to do. But every thank you that we do get is tremendous, especially when they're not expected at all.